wasn't looking for anything strange. I was just cleaning out an old drawer in the guest room when something tapped the underside of the wood. My fingernails scraped along the underside and caught the edge of an envelope taped there. Brittle, yellowed, and trembling with age. The handwriting on the front looked shaky, almost desperate. It read, "If you're reading this, I'm already dead." The words hit me harder than I expected. For a moment, I just stared, unsure whether to laugh, drop it, or call someone. But curiosity always wins with me. It's a weakness I've had since childhood. Even as a cold flush spread across my arms, I opened the envelope. Inside were 4 steps, short, terrifying, and written like a man pressed against time. Without thinking, without planning, I decided I would follow them. The previous owner of the house was Elias Venter, a recluse with no family and no close friends. I had learned his name from the bank papers but hadn't thought much about him until now. Neighbors told me he was strange, quiet but always watching the street. They said he barely left his house toward the end, and when he did, he moved like someone afraid of being seen. I dismissed the rumors as gossip. Every neighborhood has its ghost story, but holding his letter made everything feel heavier, more real, as though I was stepping into someone else's unfinished life. I sat on the dusty floor and reread the instructions. They felt deliberate, purposeful, as though Elias expected someone someday to follow them. There was a warning at the bottom written in tiny letters, "Follow the steps exactly. Do not improvise." It was the kind of line that makes you curious and terrified at the same time. Step 1 read,
"Do not open
"Go to
it."
the room
The second
where
I
the
touched
wallpaper
it,
doesn't
a
match.
knock hit the
It
wall
didn't make
behind me.
sense at first,
Hard, deliberate,
but I knew
like
the house well enough to check room by room. The hallway was unevenly lit, the old bulbs flickering whenever I walked beneath them. Each door creaked open with a dry groan that echoed faintly. Finally,
rippling,
in the smallest
growing a
room near
face,
the back,
my face.
I saw it.
Its chest expanded
One
like it was
strip
taking
of
its first
wallpaper
breath.
that looked newer, brighter, as if placed recently even though the house had been abandoned for months. My fingers slid under the edge, peeling it back. Behind it wasn't a wall, but a scratched message. Deep, frantic, carved with a shaking hand. It read, "Not safe after midnight." My heart thudded once, loudly. I didn't know what it meant, but I kept going. Curiosity drove me to the house's old security system. Elias had installed a set of cameras years ago, and surprisingly, they still stored footage. Scrolling through the archived files felt wrong, like I was intruding on a dead man's last moments. But the message behind the wallpaper made me search anyway. And then I found it, a clip timestamped just hours before Elias died. He was in the same room, staring at the very wall I'd peeled open. His face was twisted in fear. He kept looking over his shoulder as though something stood behind the camera. At the end, he rushed forward and scratched the warning. The clip ended abruptly, just before midnight. Whatever happened after that wasn't recorded or someone deleted it. Step 2 said, "Take the small metal box from the vent. Do not open it." The wording felt strict, almost urgent. Finding the vent wasn't difficult. Elias had circled it on a blueprint left in a drawer. When I unscrewed the cover, dust poured out in a soft gray cloud. Inside was a metal box, small enough to fit into my palm, cold enough to feel alive. The box rattled softly as I lifted it, like something shifted inside. But the real chill came from the message taped underneath it. "If you hear knocking, it's not me." I hadn't even finished reading the sentence when something knocked, hard, on the wall behind me. The knock didn't sound like wood. It sounded heavy, deliberate, too rhythmic to be a coincidence and too strong to be the wind. I froze. Every horror story I had ever heard sprinted through my mind at once. The silence after the knock made it worse. On instinct, I pressed my ear to the wall. Stupid, I know, but curiosity outweighed fear, at least for the moment. The wall felt cold, almost damp. And then another knock sounded, closer this time, like whatever was behind the wood wanted to come through. My fingers tightened around the metal box. I didn't know why, but it felt like I should not put it down. Step 3 read, "When the clock hits midnight, you must be in the kitchen. Lights OFF." It felt like the instructions were pulling me deeper into something Elias couldn't escape. As midnight approached, the air seemed to thicken. Every sound, The ticking clock, the creaking floor, felt amplified. When the clock finally struck 12, I turned off the lights. The house instantly became a black void. I stood in the kitchen, breathing slow and quiet, trying not to make a single noise. That's when the footsteps began. Slow, dragging, getting closer with each second. At first, I thought maybe it was the house settling. Old houses make noises. Everyone knows that. But these weren't settling noises. The footsteps had weight, intent. They crossed the hallway, each step scraping against the wooden floors like worn shoes dragged across sandpaper. My heart hammered in my chest. I held my breath, terrified it would hear me. The footsteps reached the kitchen doorway. The floorboard directly behind me groaned under pressure, as if someone were standing there. But when I turned, forcing myself to look, there was nothing. The kitchen wasn't safe. I felt it immediately. Something was moving in that darkness. Something strange. Something patient. Instinct drove me back toward the wallpaper room. My flashlight flickered as I walked, casting shaky shadows along the hallway walls. Every step felt like I was being followed. I didn't look back, afraid I'd see something standing just close enough to touch me. When I reached the room, the scratched message, "Not safe after midnight," seemed almost to glow in the dim light. The wall behind the peeled wallpaper sounded hollow, as though something inside waited to be found. I didn't plan to open the box. Not yet. The instructions told me not to. But fear makes people do unexpected things. My thumb slipped along the metal edge. The lid popped open with an eerie softness, as though the box wanted to be opened. Inside was a small rusted key and an old voice recorder. As soon as I touched the recorder, it crackled to life. Static hissed for a moment before Elias's trembling voice filled the room. "If you're hearing this, run." But the voice didn't end there. It whispered something else, something that made my skin crawl. Elias's recorded voice grew frantic. "It comes when you disturb the wall. It knows when you're here. It knows when you're afraid." Static swallowed his voice, then returned with a final whisper, "Don't leave the house. It follows." My breath caught. Suddenly, leaving didn't feel like an option. The outside world didn't feel safe. The air in the room shifted, warmer near the wall, colder at my back. I felt watched from both directions at once. Something brushed my shoulder. I spun, nothing was there. The key in the box weighed heavily in my hand. I scanned the scratched wall until I noticed a faint seam behind the warnings. A small, almost invisible keyhole sat at the center, exactly where the wallpaper had been glued down. I hesitated. Everything in me screamed to stop. But like Elias, I continued. The key slid in with a soft click. The wall shifted open like a door that had been waiting for decades to move. Dust billowed into the air. Inside was a wooden carving. A faceless human figure, smooth, polished, unsettling. The carving felt warm, alive, as though it absorbed heat from the air around it. Its faceless head tilted slightly forward, almost expectant. I placed it gently on the floor. For the first time all night, the footsteps stopped. The air lightened. It was like the house exhaled after holding its breath for hours. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful, it was watching. Why had Elias hidden the carving? And why did every noise stop the moment I touched it? Another note lay beneath it, glued to the wood with dried wax. I tore the note free carefully. The handwriting was frantic, uneven, as though Elias wrote it seconds before something reached him. It read, "It wears the face of whoever opens the wall." My throat tightened. I reread the sentence 3 times. Does that mean it was faceless until someone disturbed it? Or that it steals the face of the person who interacts with it? Either interpretation terrified me. Neither offered comfort. Both suggested I had just given it permission to change. And then, for the first time, the carving moved. It was subtle, a twitch, a tilt of the head so small I questioned whether I imagined it. But then it shifted again. Its faceless front turned toward me, not fully, just slightly. Enough to show awareness. My heart slammed against my ribs. I backed away slowly, not breaking eye contact, even though it had no eyes. The silence in the house thickened. The air pressed inward, like the house itself leaned closer to listen. I whispered, "What are you?" And then something answered, but not with a voice. The room was colder. Shadows clung to the corners like living things. I stepped forward despite my shaking legs. Something in the carving called to me, urged me. The air hummed when I touched it again. The wood beneath my hand warmed instantly. Too warm, like flesh heating under a fever. Its smooth head began to ripple. Features bubbled beneath the surface. Eyes, a nose, a mouth pressing outward beneath the wood. My stomach twisted when I realized what it was becoming. It wasn't taking a random face. It was taking mine. And it wasn't finished yet. My own features began forming on the carving as if carved by invisible hands. His cheekbones sharpened. My lips, my nose, my eyes surfaced on the wooden surface. I backed away slowly. My breath came out in short, panicked bursts. The world seemed to tilt. The carving's wooden chest expanded once, like a breath being taken. Then its mouth, my mouth, opened. I didn't hear a voice. I heard my own breath echoing back at me. I understood too late. The carving wasn't just stealing my face. It was replacing me. The footsteps in the house weren't random. They were it learning how to walk, learning how to move, learning how to be me. As I watched, its wooden limbs creaked softly and shifted. It stood up slowly, my face stretched across its surface. Its wooden jaw clicked into place with a sickening sound, forming a perfect replica of my expression. Then, in my own voice, it said, "You opened the wall." I ran. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I sprinted toward the hallway as the thing, my copy, stepped out behind me. Every wall groaned as though the house celebrated its rebirth. My footsteps echoed, but so did its, perfectly syncing with mine. I reached the bedroom door and slammed it shut, pressing my back against the wood, my entire body shaking uncontrollably. Outside, the footsteps stopped. Silence. Then a soft knock, gentle, familiar, followed by my own voice whispering, "Let me in. I don't sleep anymore." Every night it stands outside my door, waiting. And the worst part? Sometimes, the footsteps on the other side sound exactly like mine.